network. That's okay. So CalABLE is part of the ABLE network. There's the federal ABLE law, which allows states across the country to create ABLE programs. And so CalABLE is California's ABLE program. So this is a state program. So I am a state worker. I work for the treasurer's office. This isn't like a business venture. I don't get paid commission or something like that. I'm here because I care about the program and I see how important it is for people with disabilities, in particular for my kids and how I can help support them in the future. Um, and it does so by providing a lot of flexibility for how funds are saved. Um, and it allows people to be able to save money and maintain eligibility for benefits in the process. The most notable one being SSI, Supplemental Security Income. So that's CalABLE in a nutshell. It's a savings program. It's for people with disabilities, and it's designed to provide them with financial flexibility, financial independence, based on their needs. So let me play a quick clip of one of our account holders and our ambassadors, so you can get a sense for how it works for him and his family.
My son's in elementary school. He loves jungle gyms and singing, and he's crazily physically active, and he's a great, happy little kid. My son has autism. He was diagnosed just before he turned 3 years old, and he's been in special education and getting disability services since. There was this presentation on this new program called CalABLE, which I'd never heard of before as a parent. And I was like, this is the best thing since sliced bread for disabled kids. And I've been telling people about it ever since. The most important thing for a parent of a disabled child to worry about is protecting their access to disability services. The thing about an ABLE account is it protects your child's access and eligibility for disability services, which would be devastating to lose if you didn't have them. The CalABLE account, it's a great savings vehicle, an investment vehicle that my child can access immediately. This is kind of step one for financial planning for my son. And it took, I think, 15 minutes or less to set it up. The best feature is the ability to ensure that my son will continue to be eligible for disability services when he's an adult. If you're eligible, you should be doing this today. We are CalABLE.
So yeah, so again, that's Stephen, one of our CalABLE ambassadors, talking about how he's saving for his family. So as we go through this, I'll talk a little bit more about some of the things that he mentioned in his video. But that's just to try to get a flavor for what to think about when you think about a CalABLE account. So let's start with who is eligible. So in order to have a CalABLE account, you have to have a disability that starts before the age of 26. But you can open the account at any age. So, both of my kids, they're kids, they're children, so they got diagnosed at a relatively early age with autism. I got diagnosed at a much later age because when I was a kid, you didn't really have autism diagnoses, at least very, very commonly. It was much more restricted. So I got diagnosed as an adult, but doesn't matter because the disability started before the age of 26. So you can be any age for the diagnosis, to get the diagnosis, any age to open the account and maintain the account. You just have to have a disability that starts before the age of 26. And that's going to increase to the age of 46 next year, which is going to be a nice expansion. So there's two things to keep in mind for eligibility, what counts as an eligible disability. The first is if someone is eligible for SSI, Supplemental Security Income, or SSDI, Social Security Disability Insurance, and the disability started before the age of 26, then that's an easy automatic eligibility. However, you don't have to receive benefits to have a CalABLE account. So I don't receive benefits. I don't get SSI or SSDI, but I can still have an account because I can self-certify based on the Social Security Administration's list of compassion allowances or their Blue Book listing. So these are two lists of a string of diagnoses that you can look up, and it'll explain under what circumstances what disabilities would qualify for benefits, and then some of those disabilities have a little bit more detail for when it does and does not qualify. Um, what's nice and convenient is autism spectrum disorder is specifically listed in the SSA's Blue Book. It has its own line item, with or without language impairments. It's a pretty blanket approval. So that's a pretty easy one to point to. Now we recommend, but we don't require. We recommend getting a signed letter from a physician just stating that the individual has a disability. We have a form on our website that you can look up as well on our eligibility page. But it's not a requirement, and we don't need to see it. We don't want to see it. That's just something we recommend just because there are tax implications for this account. But we've also never heard of anyone getting audited for it. But better safe than sorry. Now, why should you have a CalABLE account? So having a disability is expensive. I'm sure plenty of people here right now have a sense of that. I certainly do. Um, I think when people think about, particularly people like kind of outside the disability community, when they think about what costs you might have with a disability, they probably mainly think of like healthcare, like actual medical care, doctor's visits, that sort of thing. Um, but I think a lot of the folks here probably have a realization that it goes much further than that. So yeah, it includes healthcare costs, but it also includes things like accessible housing, adaptive equipment, um, service animals, specialty diets. I have autism. My kids have autism. All three of us have our own very specific diets, and it is very frustrating to try to plan around. Also, it can be very expensive to plan around. And those are things that, well, if we didn't have a disability, it'd be a little bit cheaper. Um, and that's generally true for people with disabilities. People with disabilities, as a general rule, have to spend more money for basically the same standard of living than someone without a disability. And then on top of that, they're also more likely to be either unemployed or underemployed or have some other limitation on their income as well. Um, and so that's why we have CalABLE. CalABLE helps folks save for themselves and helps them save for someone else, whichever your circumstance might be. It might be like me, it might be both. CalABLE is designed to be able to help people in those situations. So just a couple of things to keep in mind in that vein. So how does CalABLE help people? For one, it helps people save um, and be able to spend on either spend on a daily basis on day-to-day needs. We have plenty of account holders who are using their account all the time. And then we have others who are saving for major expenses or house or retirement or anything like that. I have my own account. I'm kind of using it for like an extra retirement account slash major expenses. It works either way, and it kind of is whatever you need it to be. So there's no penalties for withdrawing. So some of you might be familiar with like a Roth IRA, or other plans like that. It's kind of similar, except we don't have penalties for withdrawing. You can withdraw at any time. You don't have to wait for it to mature. You don't have to wait for a certain age. When you need it, you can use your money. So within the account, any money you invest in the account, you can apply to different professionally managed portfolios. Those are different investment options that you can select from based on the level of risk you're looking for and how you want to save, which again is similar to things like other retirement plans or college savings plans, that sort of thing. And then you can also benefit from compound earnings over time too. We are, because we are a state program, we do try to keep our fees as low as we can. So we keep our fees competitive. We're not looking to make money. Um, and in addition, I mentioned this earlier, but earnings and interest are tax-free as long as you use the account for qualified expenditures. And I'll get into that in a bit. But again, that's a huge benefit. It's great again for like a long-term savings vehicle in particular. You don't have to pay tax on the earnings uh, for the money in the account, which is a nice bonus. But there's one bigger bonus. This is the biggest draw for a CalABLE account, which is that again, you don't have to receive benefits to have a CalABLE account, but if you do receive benefits like SSI, you can save in a CalABLE account without affecting your eligibility. So what does that mean? So I think I'm sure there's probably parents out there or others who are trying to plan for a child's adulthood, for example, and thinking about how to help with that transition, how to make them successful, how to make them as independent as they can be, and CalABLE is really critical for making that happen for a lot of children with disabilities. Um, so SSI, this is supplemental security income. This is from the Social Security Administration. SSI is the main source of income, and often the only source of income for hundreds of thousands of Californians with disabilities. A lot of people in the disability community rely on SSI um, in order to basically in order to have any income at all. Um, and but one of the major problems, one of the major challenges with SSI is that you can only have $2,000 and maintain SSI. And so just imagine, for those who aren't familiar with that, imagine if you tried to live your life and you could only have $2,000 at a time, or else you'd lose your income. How would you save for anything? How would you save for a car? How would you save for an apartment? For any sort of significant expenses, if you could only ever have $2,000 to your name at any time. It's hugely limiting for people with disabilities. And so, for me as a parent, this is something that I'm particularly concerned about. So when my oldest son was first diagnosed, he was 2, or he's about to turn 2, and at the time, able accounts didn't exist, CalABLE didn't exist. At the time, the advice was still make sure you don't save any money in his name. Don't save any money for him. Don't plan for when he's an adult, because if you put any money in his name, the second he tries to get benefits, they're going to deny him and make you spend on all the money that he has. That's been the advice for decades. Um, and so for me as a parent, that's terrifying and frustrating because I want to make sure that my kids are as independent as they can be. And they have different support needs right now. I expect that to carry on into adulthood. I expect one of my sons will probably receive SSI when he's an adult. He'll probably need that extra support. But I want him to be as independent as he can possibly be. And independence looks like different things for different people. But for me in particular, I really want him to be able to have his own apartment. Like for me, that would be the ideal outcome, is that I can help build his independence, so he would be able to live on his own, maybe with some level of support, but be able to have his own apartment. And he can't do that if he could only have $2,000, because you can't get an apartment, pay first and last month's rent, pay a security deposit, pay for furniture or just even food with $2,000. You can't do that. And so for me, CalABLE is how I'm going to help him be as independent as he can be. I can save, and in doing so, I can go beyond that $2,000 cap and still maintain eligibility for SSI. So with CalABLE, you can have up to $100,000 before potentially impacting SSI benefits. So this is really the only way that someone with a disability can save in their own name any significant amount of money. Um, while still maintaining benefits, while still maintaining SSI. And so, for me, it's the difference between maximizing someone's independence and not. So it's definitely something I really want folks to think about. If for the folks who might be on the line who are receiving SSI, this would be a way that you'd be able to save more than what you might otherwise be able to. For those who are thinking about like preparing for the transition to adulthood for a child, for example, this is how you can save, make sure they'd have some money in their own name and still get benefits when they're an adult. So I mentioned this before about creating an account to help someone else. This is on the screen. This is a list of the kinds of people who can create an account for someone else. For example, someone with power of attorney, a legal guardian, a parent, a grandparent, anyone requested by the account owner. There's a pretty broad range of people who can create an account for someone. We don't require some sort of like certification or something. I don't need like proof of guardianship or something like that. Um, it's just that when you create the account, you would just certify that, yeah, I can open this account on this person's behalf because I am their parent. That's all I did. I created the account for my kids. I clicked on them, the parents, and therefore I'm we call it the authorized legal representative. It just means the person who helps manage the account. And for those who don't need an account, or sorry, for those who can run their own account, they don't need someone to manage it or open it for them. You just click that's your own. So I created my own account. I just said that it's me, and I created my own account that way. But one thing you want to keep in mind, it's something that's always try to harp on. This money belongs to the person with the disability. So it is their account. This is their money. It is their account. It's in their name. So when you create an account for someone else, the account is for them and for their benefit. So how do you use the account? So to start with, what can you put into the account? So I mentioned already that you can have up to $100,000 and maintain SSI. Oh no, I didn't update this. Okay, this as of 2025, you can actually have $19,000 annually contributed to an account. So you can add $19,000 into each CalABLE account this year. It changes each year. Last year was 18,000, so I will have to update that. Um, but yeah, so obviously you wouldn't get to $100,000 in one year, but it's something you could build up to over time. If you're saving at the maximum amount. If you're not receiving SSI benefits, and I don't know, you're in a much better financial situation than me, I guess, you could save $529,000 total. And I guess you should win a prize or something. I don't know. That would be impressive. But again, that's what you'd want to think about. $19,000 is how much you can contribute annually. This as of this year, it'll probably change again next year. $100,000 is what you can contribute and total, what you can have total and maintain SSI. And then 529,000, that's what you can have total if you're not worried about maintaining benefits like SSI. And so what can you spend it on? The answer is a lot of things. Um, you can spend money in the account on education, on college, vocational training. You can spend it on transportation. Some of our account holders, and one of our account holders was talking about buying a wheelchair accessible vehicle for her son. You can spend it on housing. I mentioned before about, I would like to be able to use that account to pay for an apartment for my kids someday. Um, one of our account holders saved enough money that he put down a down payment on a mobile home because he got gifts from people, which I'll mention in a bit. You can use it on food. You can use it on recreation. You can use it on a lot of things. The most important thing is the sentence at the top. Any expense that helps the account holder maintain or improve their health, independence, or quality of life. That's the legal standard. And it is broad and it's supposed to be broad. Quality of life is a very broad thing. Quality of life means, you know, going to a restaurant. It can mean buying video games. It can mean a lot of things, um, as long as it's for the benefit of the account holder and they're the main person benefiting from it. And so it doesn't mean that they're the only one benefiting from it. So something to keep in mind would be something like if someone with it, and we've had this, we had one of our account holders saved up, I think he saved up over a couple of years and went on a cruise to Alaska. And he was able to pay, I think one of his parents went with him. He was able to pay for his parent to go because he needed the additional support of his parents to be able to go. And that's fine. That's an eligible expense because that's necessary for him to have gone on the trip. It's a benefit for him. So again, that's really the thing to keep in mind. Does it benefit the person with the disabilities, health, independence, or quality of life? And you can get a dog. This is my dog. This is Well, I should say this is my son's dog. This is his service dog. This is Henrietta. This is something that some of our account holders have saved up for. This is an example of what you could do. You could save. And what's great about service dog example is that you can save money for the cost of the service dog. You can use the account for the cost of the service dog. You can also use it to travel to get the service dog. And if you need someone to go with you, you can pay for that person's travel. You can pay for the flight. You can pay for the hotel. You can pay for dog food and vet visits. Really, any of those things, because that's all benefiting the person with the disability. So, that's one way to keep that in mind. Also, it's a good excuse to put my dog in here because she's adorable. Now, how can you actually use the money in the account? So there's different ways to do it. You could do transfers in and out of the account. Um, you could have a check made to pay for something, and have that check be mailed to you so you can use it to pay for a bill. Or you can get a prepaid card. Um, so how this works is, so we have a prepaid card. You just request it. It comes in the mail. The Right now we're covering all the fees for the prepaid card because we want to make sure people can use them, because we really see this as very important for the disability community. So you when you get the card, you decide how much money you want to put on the card. So you have your account, you have however much money you have in your account. You can decide, well, I want to put $100 or $500 or whatever onto the card, and then you can go use it anywhere you can use a Visa card. It is a Visa card. I've used it at the doctor's office. You can use it at the grocery store. You can use it wherever you can use a Visa card. You can also set limits on it. You can decide where it will and won't work. You can track the spending, all these things. And one thing that I'm particularly looking forward to. So my oldest son he's 11, and it may probably next year. I'm thinking maybe even later this year. I want to get him his own card. And so he could have his own card. I can decide how much money's on it. I could decide where it will and won't work. I could also have my own card tied to his account too. And for me, that's something that I would want to use to help him build his financial literacy, to help him understand how to pay for things at the store, how to figure out costs, how to track his money. That's something I'm really looking forward to, uh, as he's growing. And I could continue that when he's an adult as well. So I could continue to help support him. I could continue to help manage his card. So depending on his level of independence, if he needs additional support, I would continue supporting him as an adult. And one thing I could do is I could help him manage his card in the process. And I mentioned before we have 8 investment portfolios. This is what it looks like. I'm not going to get through all this. There's a lot on here. Um, but the important thing to keep in mind is that there is a range of options. The one at the top is the FDIC insured portfolio. That's kind of more like a regular savings account type of thing. Whereas the other seven options are a mix of stocks, bonds, and securities. So you could take a look and decide how you want to separate your money, within the different accounts. If you're looking more for long-term growth and you're willing to have a little bit of risk, you can go for one of the growth portfolios. If you're looking for more like day-to-day spending, then maybe FDIC insured or some of the other portfolios more tied to bonds. Really, it's kind of whatever you want. And so I mentioned before about account fees. This is just an example of what that might look like. So for each account, there's a $30 annual fee, and then there's a separate fee that's kind of a percentage based on the investment options that are selected. So this is just an example. If you had $3,000 in an account throughout a year, you can expect between $38 and $47, somewhere in that range of fees, depending on which investment options you chose. Now, keep in mind this is so yeah, it's a fee that would come out of the account, but also the account also grows based on what's in there, based on those investments. It can grow depending on the market performance, and also any of those earnings are also tax free. So we're a state program. We try to make this as cheap as we can, and so we are able to keep it we're able to keep it pretty competitive. Now, I mentioned before briefly about gifting. So I said that we have an account holder who is actually able to save for a mobile home, um, down payment for a mobile home because of gifts that he received from other people. And so gifting is a huge benefit for our program. So how this works is any of our account holders can set up a gifting page. It's very easy. It takes like 20 seconds. You just click on that you want a gift page, and it'll basically give you a link. There's not a whole lot to it. You just decide if money comes in, you decide what investment portfolio you want to go to. You could set limits if you want. But then you have this link, and you can send it to everyone. So I could send a link to anyone, with my name saying, send me a gift, please. And someone could just send money directly to that link. It doesn't count as income. It doesn't count against you for SSI or other benefit calculations. It does count towards those limits. So I mean, again, $19,000 this year is what you can contribute. So if you got gifts, it would come out a part of that. But this is a really great way for people to be able to support other people with CalABLE accounts. So for example, my parents live in Cathedral City, so just outside Palm Springs. I live here in Sacramento with my kids, and what is helpful about that is that they live so far away that it's very easy to guilt them into things because they don't see their kids as much as they want to. So I can send them a link to the gifting page and say, hey, help contributes to their future savings. It's a great way to guilt people into giving money to someone with a disability, someone you're supporting. So it's again, this makes it very easy for multiple people to be able to support someone, not just me, right? I run my kids' accounts, but I could create these gift page and I can have anyone be able to support them in the process. So how do you create an account? It's pretty easy. This is our website here. It's calable.ca.gov. You just click open an account at the top. And that's really all there is to it. You go through the steps. It takes about 15 minutes, maybe less. It's not really any different from like opening any other bank account or something like that. You get asked for the same type of information, um, like address and social security number or tax ID, something like that. Um, so that's just something to keep in mind. So to be eligible, you have to meet the disability requirements. You have to have a disability that starts before the age of 26. You have to have either a social security number or a tax ID. but you don't have to be a U.S. citizen. You just have to have, again, Social Security number or tax ID. And some things to keep in mind, again, you can open the account on your own. The person with the disability can open the account. I open my own account, or their representative can open an account for them. So I opened my kids' accounts. Again, the person with the disability is the account owner. It is their money. They are the beneficiary. Everything is about them. So someone can help support it, but it's ultimately their money and it's for their benefit. And each person can only have one ABLE account. So every state has, well, almost every state has an ABLE program. You can only have one ABLE account across the country. So you can't have a California one and like a Florida one, for example. However, I should mention this. So you don't have to be a California resident to have a CalABLE account. You also don't have to be a California resident to help someone run their CalABLE account. And so with that, please get an account. We have a call center. It's 833 CalABLE. They can help answer any questions. They can help you kind of go through the process of creating an account or help with any issues that come up. They support something like 140 languages or something like that. So call them up and they can probably speak any language you can think of. They can also support people with hearing impairments. You just call using a relay service. We have a customer support website that you see on the screen. We also have on the screen is the QR code that you can sign up for emails, newsletters, other information. We also have monthly webinars about the program. So if you scan the QR code or you go to our website, you can sign up for that newsletter and learn more about the program. We also have various social media channels. We have brochures. So, there's a lot of different ways that you can get information about CalABLE. So you can just look us up pretty much anywhere and you can probably find us. And then just a couple of quick disclosures. This is because we have investment options. We're required to remind people that investments naturally carry risk. It's no different from any other investment option. So for those looking at those stock options, it's something you'd want to keep in mind. And with that, that's all I have. I'd be happy to answer any questions that folks have. Again, there's a Q&A box at the bottom. So feel free to put questions in there. And then Melissa, I'm not sure if it works best for me just to answer them as a pop-up, or how would you recommend doing this?
However you would like, I can read them to you and you can answer them, or if you want to read through them and then answer them, I'm flexible.
Sure, I guess, well, if you want to read them and I can answer them, that might work.
Okay, I currently have 4 questions.
Okay.
So the first one is, I have a question. Let's say the money reached almost 90 or near 100,000 K. Then when we start so will they start taking money from it then, so it won't affect their benefits?
Okay, so yeah, how it works is, so if you're looking at the 100,000 because you want to maintain SSI, for example, we won't stop you from adding more because you can choose to do that. You'll get a notice saying, hey, you're coming up to 100,000. Make sure you're, you might want to keep that in mind. So you could either exceed 100,000 if that's what you're looking for. Because again, not everyone receives benefits. I could save more than 100,000 because I don't receive benefits. If you do receive benefits though, and you'd be nervous about that 100,000 mark, that's where you'd want to spend down. Right now, that's what you do normally with SSI. So if you're coming up to $2,000, you have to start spending down so you don't go beyond it. It works the same way for that $100,000 cap.
Thank you. Another question. I am a single mom. My 10-year-old son receives IHSS and I'm his provider. That is my only income. I want to apply for SSI for him. Does it hurt his chance if I have more than 2,000 in the bank?
That's a good question. I think you'd have to talk to Social Security Administration because it's a little bit of a different situation. because you're talking about money that you have, whereas he's the person with the disability. So you'd want to talk to Social Security and ask them what income limits and what asset limits might apply in your case. Um, However, you could, provided that he has an eligible disability, I'm assuming he has autism, given the group, that he could have a CalABLE account, and you could put money in that account without affecting SSI eligibility. So really, the question would be if he qualifies otherwise, right? Because of your income um, or just kind of how that works as a parent. So yeah, so again, I would recommend checking with Social Security to find out how that worked for you.
Thank you. And then the Visa card, can it have a minor's name on it if the child was around 11 years old?
Oh, that is a good question. I will have to find out how exactly that looks. So let me find that out, and I will get back to you.
All right. For whomever asked me that question, it's showing as anonymous. So if you want to, and I can put I don't think the chat. I can give you my email if you want to shoot me an email so that way I can relay the answer to your question. It's not coming up with the name. The next question I have is, I read something about an uploaded receipts. Do we have to provide an upload receipts for every expense that is made?
Sure. No, that's a good question. So you don't. So you can. So I guess let me answer it this way. So when you have when you use the account, you have to use it for those qualified expenses, right? So it needs to be for the benefit of the person with the disability. When you do that, uh, there's always the possibility that you would be audited at some point because there's tax implications. It's always, we haven't heard it happen, but it is possible that you might be audited by IRS or something like that. So while we don't require receipts, we do recommend just kind of as a good practice to keep those receipts. And so what's very helpful about the prepaid card is that you can just upload the receipts just directly in there. And so it's very easy. If you go into the card, your account into the account for the card, you can see what the receipts are. And so you always have that proof that there was ever an issue that you needed to prove it. So again, you don't have to, but it is just kind of a good practice.
Thank you. Is there a required amount to open?
Yes, so the minimum is $25. And then from there you can add however much money you like, whatever works for you.
And then for those that need the letter, from whom do you need the letter from? Like a physician, or what kind of proof do you have to show for the disability if they do not have or get SSI?
Sure. Yeah. So the letter would come from a physician. So again, you're not required to do it. We do, however, recommend that people do it. And let me drop in the see in the Q&A. I'm going to respond to that as well. That I have the link so anyone would be able to look at it. So again, we have I might have mentioned this. We have a sample form on our website. Let's see. Okay. So we have a sample form on the website. You do not have to use that form. Again, you don't have to do anything with it really. We just recommend it as a good practice. However, we do try to make it easy. So you could take that form, you could give it to a physician and ask them to just fill out and just verify that you're eligible based on the Social Security Administration's criteria. And there's some instructions on the form for the doctor. So they could fill out that form, or they could do like my doctor did and say, I don't sign other people's forms, and they just sign their own letter, and that's fine too. Oh, yeah, thank you. So Melissa just added that to the chat for everyone as well. Yeah, so whatever works. We just recommend a signed letter from a physician who can verify that person has a disability that meets the criteria. And autism being the easiest, one of the easiest ones, it's very plainly listed as eligible.
Thank you. All right, the next question is, well, thank you for your presentation. They were saying, I have a 529 plan. Can I also have a CalABLE account without affecting Social Security benefits? And does the 529 plan count towards the 100,000 with the ABLE account?
Okay, good question. Yeah, so 529 plan, for those who aren't familiar, that's a college savings plan. Actually, one floor below me in my building is Scholarshare, which is California's 529 plan. You should look into that too. So college savings plans, you can, there's some things to keep in mind. So you can roll over a 529 plan into an ABLE account. So some of our account holders do that. You know, when my kid was diagnosed, I had already been kind of thinking about college savings and, without how that would work. It became kind of clear college might not be in the picture. So I didn't end up opening a college savings plan, and also didn't have CalABLE at the time. So, didn't really have a way to save for the future. However, now that we have CalABLE accounts, we do have people that, for example, they'll start saving and then there'll be a diagnosis and then they realize college might not be the best thing to save for. So you can, at least between now and the end of this year, you can take money in a 529 college savings plan and roll it over into a CalABLE account. So that's just something to keep in mind. So now, does it count towards the $100,000 with the ABLE account? That is separate. The ABLE account is its own account, and so the $100,000 is its own separate limit. So I'm not quite sure how it might affect SSI eligibility, either as assets or as resources, though. You might want to check with the 529 plan directly to ask them how it works. But at least you can, however, you can put that into a CalABLE account if that's something that you think might be more appropriate. So we have a lot of account holders who have both CalABLE and a 529, and we have a lot who transition from a 529 to a CalABLE account. It really just kind of depends on your situation and what you're planning toward.
Thank you. Another one was, can you roll a 403B account into CalABLE?
No, not directly. So you could, I don't know what penalties you might have. You could hypothetically withdraw from it and add to a CalABLE account, but you wouldn't be able to roll it over. So 529 has a very specific legal exception in federal law.
Is the cutoff age 26 years?
No. So again, you have to have a disability that starts before the age of 26, but you can open it at any age. So I was diagnosed in my mid-30s. I forgot exactly when. I finally got a diagnosis, and then I opened my account, the last couple of years, and well beyond 26. But that's fine because the disability started at birth. So for folks with autism, that's there shouldn't really be an issue. Everyone's going to be eligible for it.
Okay. And then they're asking if you take money out when it reaches 99, for example, to take 30,000 to buy a car, can you add more money back in until you hit 99?
Yes, you can. One thing you have to keep in mind is you can only add in, again, this year you can only add in $19,000 in this calendar year. But yeah, you could do that. So if you reach 99,000 and you make a major expense with it, obviously that'll drop you down. You could just kind of grow back up to 99,000 and still maintain those benefits.
I also had another question about the prepaid card for a minor. I have your name, and as soon as he gets me the answer to the question, I'll be able to email you with the response about your 12-year-old son and his prepaid card.
Mm-hmm.
All right, another question I had, and this was from one of our Spanish-speaking families, is what happens to the fund if the individual passes away?
Sure. So there's a couple things to keep in mind. There is an exception in the law that if there is a sibling, a step sibling, or a half sibling who can also have an ABLE account, the money can go directly to them. So that's a very specific, unique exception in the law. It has to be a sibling, step sibling, or half sibling. So the money can be rolled over directly from there. Another thing to keep in mind is that even though the person is deceased, you could still use the account for any of their expenses that are still pending. So, for example, if there's any expenses that are still pending that they had purchased before they died, for example, um, or um, or also things like funeral expenses, burial expenses. That's specifically eligible expense. So you could still use it for that. Um, Otherwise, once those two things are exhausted, then it just becomes part of the person's estate. So it's just like at that point, it'd be just like any other bank account or something that you'd have to now decide, who inherits it. Um, the thing to keep in mind though is that well, two things to keep in mind. One is at that point that's not a qualified expense, so there would be a tax penalty on it. So a tax penalty on the earnings would apply in that case. The other thing to keep in mind though, which is it's a pretty significant thing. So um, in the vast majority of cases, we have more information on our website, but in the vast majority of cases, um, the estate would not be subject to Medi-Cal recovery. So for those who are familiar with it, you have to pay back Medi-Cal expenses. It could be tens of thousands of dollars or hundreds of thousands of dollars at the time of death. But money in a CalABLE account is almost always exempt from it. There's some specific scenarios. We have info on our website, but it's usually exempt from it.
Thank you for that. Do you have to have a direct deposit?
No, so you can. A lot of our account holders get direct deposit from Social Security Administration, for example. Um, but like me, I just do I set up one-time and recurring deposits for me and my kids. So there's different ways to do it. So, but yeah, you can have direct deposit. You don't have to have direct deposit.
Right, the next question. If our son turns 18 and still is not able to manage his own finances, can we continue as his representative payee and also add an 18-year-old sibling?
Yes. Well, okay, sorry, that's a two-part question. Can you
Right.
continue as the representative payee? Yes, you can continue as the representative payee. Again, we call it authorized legal representative. It just means the person helping them run it. Um, what really matters is, what are they able to make those kinds of decisions on their own? And if not, then you would continue supporting them just like you would continue supporting them with anything else, right? So when my kids turn 18, most likely what's going to happen is one of them, I would continue to manage their account, and the other one, I would hand him the keys, and that would just be his. It's probably what will happen. So it kind of depends on what's best for them in that position. But the other part of the question, can you add an 18-year-old sibling? I'm not sure if you mean if you can add the 18-year-old sibling to help manage the account, but only one person is the representative. So it can be a sibling. Sibling is someone who could run the account, but there would have to be one person.
I think that's what she meant, maybe when the younger sibling becomes an adult,
18. Yeah.
they can hand it over. Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay. If my son is 21 and does not have a CalABLE account yet, can we only put 18,000 in a year until he turns 26?
Sure. So, well, this year it's 19,000. 18,000 was last year. They increased it. So this year you can put in 19,000 in the calendar year. But it's a lifelong account. It doesn't, your son could have the account till he's 105 and put in whatever the annual limit is each year, as long as it doesn't go over the maximum cap. So yeah, so there's no limit. We have a lot of account holders who save, they try to save the max amount every year. But also we have, obviously we have plenty of account holders who only save a portion of it because everyone's in a different financial position. but you don't have to worry about, you know, stopping at a certain age. You can keep going.
And can you spread the money in the investment from the savings to a different investment fund?
Yes. So again, there's the 8 portfolios that we have. And so you can pick and choose what you want, and you can pick more than one. You're not limited to any specific one. So you know, like me, I have a couple of them to kind of diversify a little bit. And that's perfectly fine. You can kind of decide how you want it to look, really. It's up to you.
And I actually had a question. I heard when you mentioned in your presentation about the transportation, you had a family that wanted to purchase a van for their individual. So how does that work if that individual is not going to be the driver and the car is under the parent's name? Can you still utilize CalABLE even though it's the car title is under the parent?
Yep, yes. So again, who is benefiting from it, right? That's the thing to keep in mind. If and so we have an account holder who's very excited. I should find that video and maybe I'll add to future presentations, but she's able to save up and get a wheelchair accessible vehicle for her son. And so her son can't drive. Her son's in a wheelchair. And so yeah, it's her car and she's the one driving it, but she wouldn't need a wheelchair accessible vehicle if, you know, if her son wasn't in a wheelchair, right? And that's the thing to keep in mind. Like who is benefiting and how is it benefiting the person with the disability in particular? So yeah, in that kind of case, if you need a wheelchair accessible vehicle or like like me, you know, I have special car seats for my kids. Even though it's I guess it's my property, it's still for the benefit, and I would be able to use a CalABLE account for that.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you.
Mhm.
And then another question is, since this is a saving investment account, a 529A plan, they have 2 questions. Do they have to invest?
Sure. Like I said, there are 8 different investment options, and you can find more information on our website. But there's 8 different investment options. One of them is an FDIC insured account. That just basically pays a flat interest rate. Or I shouldn't say flat because it can vary based on um, you know what's going on in the market, but it pays an interest rate, and then we have 7 portfolios that are all tied to stocks, bonds, and securities. So because it is tied to the market, yes, I mean there is the potential to lose money just like there is with any other investment options, just like there is with a college savings 529 plan. Um, but it's something to keep in mind. And so you could, for example, look at lower risk options or the FDIC account option if that's something you're concerned about. You know, you can decide how you want to save.
Thank you. And then I have one more question. Do you guys have financial advisors that can assist?
We don't, and that's why I generally say you can look for information on our website. We can't provide direct financial advice. I can answer questions about the portfolios or how the program works, but I wouldn't be able to give direct advice for, you know, what to invest in.
Okay. And are there fees for the portfolios?
Yes, so like I mentioned, every account has a $30 annual fee, and then there's a range of based on the portfolio selected, there's a range of fees that are like a percentage of a percentage. Um, so it varies depending on how much money you have in the account. So the example I showed earlier was if you had $3,000 in an account, the fees would be somewhere between $38 or so and $47 or so, somewhere in that range, depending on what you choose.
Okay. Look at that, right on the mark, 7:30.
Yeah.
I have a question. Are you, we usually like to send our participants the presentation. Is that something that CalABLE allows or the presentation just for you?
Sorry, can you say that again?
The PowerPoint presentation, is that something that we can?
Oh, the PowerPoint thing. No, yeah, I'd be happy to send that out.
Okay, so once I receive that email, I will be able to send all the information out to those who participated this evening.
Mhm.
They had one more question. To follow up, can we choose the FDIC option and one of the 7 portfolios at the same time?
Yes, yeah, you can do a mix. You can pick a range of the different portfolios. It's up to you how you want to split it up.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you, Thomas, again for your time. It was very, very informative. Thank you guys for spending the evening with us. If you have any questions, I'm going to put my email in the chat. I know we were pending for the Visa card. I will get that answer, and then I will send those who reach out with their information an email. Spell it right. Yep. And sorry, multitasking. And then that's my name as well. So I'll be able to reply that question possibly tomorrow or by the end of the week. And then again, thank you, Thomas, and we'll send out the presentation later this week or earlier next week as well.
Okay, great. Thank you so much for having me.
No, it's our pleasure. You guys have a good evening.
All right, good night.
Night.